first college tournaments going on. Reese is in it.
Oh yeah, Missouri, right?
Yeah. Oh, Reese won round one.
Okay, two things real quickly. I want you guys to be clear on framework. Just be very clear as to what offense links and what doesn't, and then make sure to weigh. Don't just assume that offense links or doesn't link. Please just tell me, this links, this doesn't link, weigh, etc., etc. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Wait, 2 seconds. Sir, I just need a phone.
Yeah.
Feeling good?
Yeah.
Then we're ready.
First, oppression is bad for equality. 8-point arbitrariness. Identity is morally arbitrary, so allowing discrimination undermines the foundation of a moral theory. B-point inclusion is an epistemological prerequisite. Oppression is the biggest impact since we now form moral theories unless all those affected are included by it. C-point, any theory that conjoins an unequal societal order to be rejected since it would not be accepted by those at the bottom. This would make it useless as a political philosophy which must be justifiable to citizens who the government rules over. Second, Negative is assume a starting point of equality, grounding their framework as a prevalent communicating ethic. The starting point is flawed because if their justification takes into account the unequal social orders, they would require rectifying those inequalities since it's a corrupt ethical justification. 3. After liberalism is redeployed to maintain status quo oppression, only active resistance can solve other ethics that only serve interests of power. Bonus level 6 explains using the example of racism. Ideologies of the powerful center of reinforcement of the status quo dominant frames hide the face of dominant liberalism and racial equal oppressed the same movement. Abstract liberalism involves using liberalism as an abstract matter to explain racial matters. Why can appear reasonable while opposing a purpose to deal with inequality tenet that government should intervene as little as possible. That should change should happen through slow evolutionary processes rather than governmental action justify keeping affairs the way that they are. Behind the right to choice lays the assumption that all groups have the same power because whites have more power. Their choice represent a form of white supremacy. 4. The strong concern between two types of violation. The question is where their framework must be able to weigh impacts and oppression should be a relevant impact under their framework, or else you should reject and say it literally says inequality is not bad, which violates the most fundamental requirements of an ethical theory, and these conflicts default to oppression. A. Certain groups have been marginalized for a long time, so correcting these ensures the possibility for future change, prioritizing other violations allows that marginalization continue indefinitely. B. Inequality is especially relevant regardless of the degree of harm caused. The fact that people are equal means that one group should not be harmed for the sake of the collective. C. Marginalization spills over and impacts all other types of violations, restricting free speech, political inclusion, and democratic vitality, so discriminating to other standards and other often. 5th. Traditional ideals of democracy, formal inclusion, and negative rights are exclusionary, making the liberative process a legitimate until we transform them. Young, in any society structured by inequality, formal inclusive processes enact structural biases which call for actors that create access to the deliberative process and dominate proceedings. Citizens should criticize public deliberation, even when the latter form rules to the extent that the structural inequalities restrict access. Their conclusions are not legitimate. They should be aimed to speak on behalf of those excluded. Specifically, heteronormative power structures are exclusionary and problematize notions of democracy. Pharaoh 4. Heteronormative means that it has to be known only for males and others for only females. Individuals who do not fit are made into one sounds heteronormative practices block access to full legal, full political and social participation for millions of individuals. The anti-democratic exclusionary ideology undermines the fundamental mission. 6. Enacting epistemology is the other way the framework will be biased, making itself being a better epistemological standpoint is a prerequisite to accurate ethical deliberation. The dominant standpoint includes meaningful discussion of how morality is constructed because it ignores oppression, examining ethical problems from the oppressor's key. Jagger in 83. The standpoint of the oppressor provides a view of reality that is more partial than the ruling class. The condition of the oppressor visible only dimly to the ruling class. The oppressor may be able to see the ruled as well as the rules of the community. The standpoint of the oppressor includes the standpoint of the ruling class. Thus, the standard is resisting oppression. Impact. 1. Oppression is necessarily a group. Harm constitutes a harmful act towards a group because they are certain group peers. Intent the act of the group cannot be reduced to the act of its individual members of the joint action is broken down. The essential element is lost. The coordination of the action groups can also be obvious. Lynching is an attack on the group, not just the individual victims. When oppression is used loosely to name any harm, it loses critical potential and intuition. And second, intuitions are balanced against the mandates of a moral theory. So a moral theory that would exclude intuitive harms like racism or oppression are stronger evidence that the theory is false. Banhan in 99. Certain scientific theories overturn aspects of our common sense, so are so well established. We accept no moral theory can have the authority of validating the best supported scientific theories have. We are uncertain about what consideration would justify moral theory when an intuition comes to conflict with a moral theory, which should be profoundly redundant to abandon the plan. Now the offense. First is that transgender youth are targets of discrimination, violence, action is needed. Carol and 9 teachers participate in harassment when youth come out as transgender. Parents often come out experiencing high levels of conflict that support leads to feelings of isolation. More than half of transgender youth attempt to kill themselves, and denied access to hormones is a leading cause of suicidal tendencies. Carol and 9 research has found that depression and suicidality among transgender people are tied to unmet need for gender-conforming medical care. Denied access to hormones represents the refusal to recognize the humanity of trans people, frustration, or ability to self-determinate, or treatise upon autonomy as to discrimination. Hormone treatment has been shown to alleviate depression, reducing the risk of suicide in transgender youth, and lack of control over their own bodies lead trans adolescents to illegally get access to therapy. Carol and 09 many trans youth seeking access to hormones encounter a number of barriers. We obtain some obtain hormones from sources other than medical professionals. Those may be of poor quality or doses. They may be taken with reused infected needles. Fear hormones create potential for serious health problems and may prove fatal. Thus, the plan resolved. Government should ensure that adolescents have the right to make autonomous medical choices regarding hormone suppression therapy. I reserve the right to clarify and cross for issues of specification, which is key to prevent debates every round, and solvency. First is that parental consent is insufficient for trans people. The mature-minded doctrine itself is the conception of law and treatment for adolescents leads to from trans adolescent medical rights. Carol and 09 parents of trans youth often abuse for absence. This makes it difficult for adolescents to obtain transition-related medical care. Trans youth overcome the loss of mature-minded doctrine and acceptance parental consent. The doctrine allows for the treatment if the youth is mature enough to face the consequences of her actions. The doctrine allows minor to consent to treatment without permission from the court, reducing legal uncertainty, can encourage medical clinics to revise their treatment procedures, and parental influence can kill adolescents into gender conformity. Coleman and 12 before intervention or consent for adolescents exploration of families should be undertaken. Adolescent shift towards gender conformity can occur to please the parents' physical intervention. 1 full reversible intervention. GnRH analogs to suppress estrogen and testosterone. Continued contraceptives to suppress menses. 2nd, partially reversible intervention. Hormone therapy can masculinize or feminize the body. 3rd, irreversible intervention. There are surgical procedures and puberty suppressing hormones reaffirm fluid conceptions of identity, which is key to solve Coleman 12. Adolescents may be eligible for puberty suppressing hormones as soon as puberty have begun. Hormones use give adolescents force to explore their gender nonconformity and facilitate transition by preventing the development of sex characteristics that are impossible to reverse if adolescents continue to pursue sex reassignment, and use of puberty suppressing hormones during adolescence is key to reverse social backlash against trans individuals. Coleman 12. Early use of puberty suppressing hormones can avert negative self-and-emotional consequences of gender dysphoria more effectively than the latter use would function. Later life would be compromised by the development of irreversible secondary sex characteristics during puberty, and refusing treatment for trans adolescents has emotional consequences. Coleman 12. Refusing intervention for adolescents might prolong abuse and stigmatization. Gender-related abuse is strongly associated with psychiatric distress during adolescence, withholding puberty suppression, and hormone therapy is not option. And parental consent is just another group that transgender youth have to jump through. Carol 2. Transgender youth seek hormones and counter barriers to express their gender identity. Parents of trans youth are often hostile or absent in some states. Mature-minded doctor allows physicians to provide medical services without parental consent, and athletes are raised 8.times through 1 year is too short to cover to read theory, especially from there till RBI is ensures theory is reciprocal.
Let's talk about the plain text. So it's only hormone suppressant.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So then let's talk about the framework.
Mm-hmm.
So first one says that depression is bad, right? Arbitrariness is the first example, for instance.
Yep.
So are all of these preempts to like different moral theories, or can you talk about how they preempt different moral theories?
What do you mean? Like you argue, well, like sure, they can apply to other moral theories, but they would also justify why, in terms of an ethical theory, we should default to minimizing the compression.
Okay, sure. So let's talk about epistemological prerequisite.
Sure.
So you literally just have a tag and then say that's the biggest impact. Where's the warning?
Oh, what are you talking about? You're talking about
B subpoint for epistemology.
B subpoint for epistemology. Oh, in the first one,
Never mind.
like the first.
Let's talk about
Well,
that.
your references are.
Let's talk about a C subpoint. Any theory that condones an unequal societal order. So what would be like an unequal societal order? Can I condemn those like in a way? But then if I say that like okay, so if I just say that they don't matter as much, is that like are you going to extend this as a reason for the AC framework?
There'll probably be a reason for the AC framework, because the argument is that until people are on an equal playing field, right, so to speak, then it would not be condoned by people who are like not considered as equal to others, so it would be rejected.
Sure. Let's talk about Silva.
Sure.
So he says that ethics can only serve the interests of power.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the warrant?
The argument here is that if we reinforce existing ideologies, all it does is instead of actively resisting current power structures, it just reinforces the interests at the top. The argument is that in order for us to actually solve things such as oppression and status quo, we have to have active resistance. Other ethics do not account for this.
Sure. So how come I can't actively resist with a different ethic? It doesn't seem like you ever explained that.
Well, that would be the burden of proof would be on you, right?
No. How come you're the one making a complaint against my framework? how come that complaint still stands if you have no warrant?
No, there is a warrant. The argument is that it gives the example of like liberalism and how liberalism has been used.
Okay,
to,
so what is the liberalism you talk about?
I mean, we're talking about. I'm
Uh,
not sure about your question.
So at some point we talk about liberalism to explain equality. What else do you talk about liberalism?
What do you mean? Where else are we talking about liberalism?
You talk about liberalism pretty specifically.
Yeah, sure.
Like the abstract liberalism.
Yeah, sure.
What
The argument is that like these conceptions of equal opportunity and justifying things based on like that sort of ethic is problematic because it doesn't like it's a passive change rather than an active change, which means that it can therefore be like co-opted. That is the argument.
Okay. That's just about time.
Right.
I have a minute and 30 seconds left. Let me just flash.
Would you use students, or are we using between 3 or 4? 4.
So the order will be NC 1 off AC.
Just one thing, when you get to the AC, just be clear on the signposting.
Okay.
So I know where you are.
Everyone ready? Considers consistency with universalizability as factor research recognizes that reality must be bound for everyone development. As reasons you have access to perspective constant across time and person, the universality of some students is evident can be judged within that perspective, convening the some students who are aware of the for all, or doesn't the torture existing for a judgment of all. This head is project for university one rack for clarity. This distance must drive change in the state's membership. The statements have to show to a for everything done by single legitimately speak for all action across time united will sustain the legitimacy of past legislation. Thus, the united will system a universal and that's the only thing that would access legislation comes in the face of free and consideration. That's take people under the contract of beliefs and students shared by all citizens. Further, governments must use factor reason which always on responses to on twinkling to the reds. I contend that adolescents should respect their parents' decisions thus cannot make medical choices independent of their parents' lead on them. Our moral obligation to respect our parents, if not, she is ungrateful, supporting our parents to make less than we. I respect that and become more obedient to our parents, so we have our own freedom, ideas, and opinions. Our parents who do not be here today, who paved the way for us, who have fed us and gave us what we asked for, none other than our parents. Children are subordinate to the guardians who are responsible for the upbringing of their teen too. Parents bring children into the world without the consent of their children. Parents act for the benefit of their children, enabling children to become remorse of being cared because that's of their children. The child's guardian can authorize the to the child such medical treatment are those acts are not wrong. Two implications: A, parents should care for children to create meaningful beings that contribute to that care because that's any further action. And B, simply because children's the guardians must consent to act for them. Lastly, there's a difference between a wrong and a harm. You can't hold against my head to generate the charity, which so wrong means getting good and just show legitimate. That's why terms are linked under B to be AC or to be NC. Can evaluate in space impacts for reasons. One, having impacts for indicative impacts on human beings, rather than all the important effects of applications. Use all exceptionally possible. Two, your need to not starve may feel just as bad as the scroll guide means or latte.
Pause. I can't hear you. Okay, go for it.
To your feet, your need to not starve may feel just as bad as slow guide needs or lacking feelings relative to you can't wait. The state is in no position to take answers on these conflicts. Three, util can evaluate acts like the topic is the state of affairs like earthquakes have no more worth, only murder roots and exactly being analyzed correspond. Util is a moral theory whose values finding the effects, but morality is about the acts. Four, choice paralysis, you just said something's only more to maximize utility, so within the act of the action better than any possible alternative, but there are infinite alternatives you can never act. First off, A, link your conflagration of transgender people with transsexual traits, the unique experience of transsexuals and essentialized gender shot will amount. Transsexual identity individuals have sought out medical recognition of the sex which they identify. It is referred to biological sex characteristic rather than social construct gender. This likes to term that people identity transgender, which is widely used as a relegate a category for transsexual people, but also for queer non-gendered identities, cross-dressers, or transvestite. An awful lot of people, however, there is a fact and important difference. I argue that two terms must be treated as distinct and are not conflated under one umbrella. The conflation of these terms reflects biological sex and gender, therefore naturalized and essentialized gender. It is possible to cross the lines of gender without identifying as another sex to be one assigned at birth, however. Impact A, you ignore the real life experience of trans, so it can be perpetuate the stereotype that shapes patriarchy. Jebos 215. Gender essentialism is the idea that men and women have inherent, unique, and naturally attributable qualifies as them as separate genders. They are viewed as polar opposites. Men are strong women, or weak men, dominant women, or submissive, and so on. Gross, right? Gender essentialism fuses gender and sex to one and another, intrinsically, naturally going to the masculine red body. Being a woman is sheer impossibility. Trans people aim to become their true self, not become the opposite sex. They are already men, women, or non-binaries who are searching ways to access their reality and altering bodies so that they feel more comfortable with it. And these are self-affirmations break apart the idea of the person who is permanently and biologically tied to their gender. See alternative, reject the act in favor of holistic model of gender. Jebos 15. Gender essentialism. Blame for the gender-based oppression. Our identities differ from the social norms. We are going to take the gender essentialism. They can't be natural law. Many people embrace gender artifactualism. Gender as a social construct. If socialization brainwashes us into becoming heterosexual masculine men and female feminine women, and then how do you explain the fabulous tomboy trans women? Myself, gender is another essential or non-artifactual, but is the essential and artifactualist, each to some degree depending on the individual person. It refers to this concept as a holistic model of gender. On case starting on contention. Sex reassignment uniquely is difficult decision for adolescents. They don't have a grasp on the value of fertility. They aren't a good education aid to help them compete. Oh, no. Because early adolescents may not feel qualified to make decisions about fertility and may not fully understand effective hormones. Consent education to include members of the adolescents work group. There's no formal evaluated decision aids available to assist adolescents beginning sex reassignment treatment. And it turns out getting infertility is also a traumatic experience because they may not feel comfortable with that later in life, especially when so many people aren't necessarily comfortable with how they were originally. Framework. Philosophy as liberatory Russell. The woman who has no tincture of philosophy goes through life imprisoned in prejudice from the habitual belief that the age or nation or condition which have grown with deliberation reason as we philosophize even in everyday life being problems which only very incomplete answers can be given philosophy free from time custom free from the dogmatism those who have never traveled through the military laboratory liberating guide by showing familiar things and familiar aspects. Controls the eternal link the oppression arguments the only way we can deconstruct oppression is by challenging all prejudices and philosophy is key and philosophy is key to social change value like in solving scientific questions. Bulletin 14. There's a lot of field progress to appropriate into the views of the world. Obvious individuals are equal faceted. It doesn't matter that wouldn't have occurred to Plato. He said you only need to trade Greeks the same. Phil introduces the extension of rights, and Osseo argued that animal treatment movement grows here. This philosopher arguing everyone dismissed it, but discussed it, and even criticism is taking it seriously. Scientific knowledge represents Phil issues the multiverse of finding science in the brain free will. We will find meaning through Phil. So those controlling internal theory oppression arguments. You say that we should we should just default to saying that oppression is bad when it's not that simple to actually just say oppression is bad. Also, philosophy is key to solving oppression, and you by believing that a single ideology can be capable of solving all problems would one. A theory whose uncritical adoption would reject small evil could never exist. The correct standard is ethic is whether right at the level of basic values, not whether it contains some magical property that protects us from every consideration. All theories are equally subject to abuse. You think, certain philosophy, or protects from moral errors, extreme behaviors that thought itself is actually responsible for the evil people do. That also turns the case because you are not resisting any oppression. You are engaged. Said your moral theory is actually promoting oppression. And philosophy is key to stopping racism. He shares the value. Also, ended are relevant because those criticisms can be applied to any theory, including the NC theory would too. Criticism of any historical philosopher on the grounds of that really such an indirect way of arguing against contemporary use of the philosopher's idea is specifically important philosopher's influence that nothing is built by association practiced by those incapable of challenging the philosopher on their merits. Start on the framework. He says oppression is bad. Yes, I agree oppression is bad. However, there's a distinction in which we agree oppression is bad. Oppression would be bad under means-based framework, but the consequences of the oppression are not what we have to consider. We have to assign them less weight because they don't link as much into the universalizability. But off of Silva, what you have to decide to take the burden of proof. You said in the process that it was my fault, my job, but you never proved why I can't solve a question. My card also turned this card because they control the internal link because I am trying to solve a question. All the true violations card, I say to reject framework that inequality is bad. I say that everyone should be equal, and we are equal as long as we do have access to factual reason. You can also cross-apply that to this third argument that the NC assumes a starting point, but I don't assume any starting point. I say that everyone is equal because of factual reason. Also, all of this spillover arguments, those don't matter because it's not. I'm conceding that oppression does matter. Off of the typical democracy and exclusionary, I'm not looking to a typical form of democracy. You say that the structure lies in the bias, but there isn't a question about bias. I'm not biased towards anyone. That's just something that you believe that the AC have against functions. Also, the sixth point, you say accurate epistemology, fallacy of origin. We just have philosophy. Epistemology doesn't mean that we must use.
Ready?
Yes.
Just okay.
Condition. I'm not distinction.
So what in what instances can you take it?
I'll kick it if you don't turn it.
Okay. Alright, let's talk about the link. What is it? Your Shaw 11 draws a distinction between transgender and transsexual. What is that distinction?
So, transsexual or sexual. So sex is a biological construct. For instance, I can be born as a male or I can be born as a female. But transgender, gender is what is a social construct. So, for instance, if I want to change my gender, that's what gender is. It's something that it's just your own mindset. So, for instance,
So it's a question of identity.
He says that it's people, trans people aim to become their true self. So in that way, gender is just how you aim to become your true self.
So how does the F violate this distinction? Why is the F? Is your
cards are pretty specific. So for instance, you can.
Well, I'm a little confused about the link. The link is just that there is this distinction between transgender and transsexual. The distinction is that transgender is a biological construct.
Well, no, because that's part of it, but then there's very specific examples in the actual card. So for instance, queers are non-gendered identities, cross-dressers and transvestites, like that you group a lot of people.
Where does the F group that?
So you just refer to trans as pretty much everyone throughout the rhetoric of the AC.
The rhetoric of the AC. Can you point me to a line?
Sure. So for instance, you talk about. Let me just pull your attention.
Sure. While we're waiting for that, let's talk about the alternative. What does it mean to, what is a holistic model of gender?
So that is not grouping everyone and looking at people's actual experiences.
What does that mean?
So the card is.
What does the alternative do?
So it isn't about something like a policy option that we do, for instance,
Sure.
But it is a mentality that we have to embrace.
Okay, you can see that status quo is inherently violent against these people. Why will the alternative solve?
Because, so I say that this is a mindset that we have to embrace. It doesn't matter about the status quo being that way. If I can change people's mindset.
Is the opposite also the case?
Yes. I say
Why?
so. Because I am no longer grouping these people, and I am giving them an option. Instead, it isn't necessarily hormone surgery, but it is about giving them the mentality to feel comfortable about themselves.
Okay. So
Also in the AC you say trans a lot, and you never really refer to transgender, transsexual. So the assumption.
So just the use of the word trans.
No, that's not so much it, but your case just doesn't really talk about this.
So it's a link of omission.
No, not really. It is just that you ignore the fact and you instead make it worse by not calling them what they are.
Sure. Okay. This is a link based on reps, right?
Based on what?
On reps.
What do you mean by
Representations.
Can you explain or elaborate?
It's not the AC policy, right? It's the AC rhetoric and stuff, right?
No, not only, but it's also the policy.
Why?
Because you're still grouping people. You just say all trans people in your world, but it isn't just about all.
That seems to be just the representation of the plant, not the actual plant itself. Why does the
no,
process of
because
hormone therapy linked to this?
Because, the card in the link says, you're still ignoring large groups of people, such as just queer people or just transvestites or cross-dressers. You don't necessarily know how they identify, but you just say that they can do whatever they want.
Okay.
authorities such as parents have control over the trans youth and to allow for them to decide what they what they would want as target for the applicant. The alternative cannot solve the case. It's simply a value reorientation. But my argument is that only a political process can solve for the inherent things in the status quo. The process was pretty bad for him when he could not explain how this value reorientation was simply enough to change the paradigms of the status quo. Only the affirmative can solve. The Coleman 12 evidence says that puberty suppressing hormones from a fluid conception of identity. It is not a question of transferring from one gender to another. Rather, it is a question of becoming who you are and maintaining this fluid conception of identity. This is also This is also sufficient to take out the link to take out the link on the cheat because it was 100% conceded, which means that 100% to the link of this argument. This also means that we do not categorize based on gender because, like I mentioned earlier, it's not a question of shifting gender. Rather, it's a question of becoming who you are, which exactly what the affirmative does. Now, your Henry evidence. The Henry evidence does not apply. The 8 point is that you have conceded that mature minor doctrine exists in the world of the affirmative, which means that obviously even if it is true that adolescents may not have the best decision-making capabilities, they still would be able to make good decisions on their own behalf, which means that it takes the argument. B point is that you've also conceded that the plan is reversible. There are 3 methods. The first is that you would have complete change in hormones. The second is that you would make it reversible, which is conceded. This is a nuance of the plan that you obviously dropped down the affirmative. He has missed the entirety of the point of the affirmative. The affirmative does not say that all of philosophy is bad. Rather, it says that in order for philosophy to be justifiable, it has to actively resist oppression. This takes out your Russell through your would-to evidence, because even if it is true that we agree that philosophy can prevent bad things like oppression, rather, it is just a question of what type of philosophy would do that in the first place. Only the African solve extent the number one extent the bonus of evidence that after liberalism has been beat up to maintain status quo oppression. This directly links into the anti-framework. The argument here is that notions of equal freedom and universalizability are problematic because historically they have been used to keep people in keep them marginalized in a position of subordination, which means that only active resistance can solve. This is what we're criticizing. Recognize that oppression is bad is not enough to solve for any of the options here. Now, on the line, you say that I have the burden of proof. I have proven that active resistance is unique. Which means that your argument. You say that you don't just defend the strength of democracy. You don't defend the strength of democracy. You can see that that it's a question of active resistance, which you do not. You say that you're not looking at the stuff. That's fine. I'll concede. This is just defense. Now on the key. Okay. Right. There is no link to the critique here. First, it said we are not ignoring these conceptions of identity. Just because we use the word trans does not reflect how the plan views transgender people. It is not a question of gender. Rather, it is a question of looking at a conception of fluid identity. Second is that the plan is not coercive. Rather, it just allows people to formulate their own decisions. The first, they don't have to do so if we want, which means that we don't categorize them. Also means that the NC framework is not office because you can still consult parents, but the problem, but adolescents need to have the ability to actually achieve their goals. You see that we ignore other stuff, other forms of oppression. No, we do not. We recognize gender as fluid, which is exactly what the case arguments would indicate. Now, on the alternative, the first is that it cannot solve the case. The 8 point is that it's only questioning the status quo. Permutation do both solves best because it takes the value reorientation of the alternative and combines with the affirmative political process. Case is a net benefit because only the affirmative can solve the issues of the status quo that are presented throughout the case. Second is that we have to use the political process. That was the argument of also to the after the alternate instance. It don't point to the 8 point. It's enough to solve the residual links in which case would be a net benefit every point. It doesn't solve in which case you would reject it in the first place. The third is that this obviously does not apply to the app, and it obviously does not solve. We don't mandate people to change gender. It's just a fluid conception.
Okay. I have a minute and 30 seconds left. Did you turn the K?
What?
Did you turn the K?
What do you mean?
You turn the K.
Well, yeah, so you don't solve.
So then can I? So how does that turn the K? You just say that I don't solve. That's just defense.
Well, I guess the argument's by the status quo and stuff. Status quo
so
you gender bad.
didn't.
No,
okay,
the status.
So when
someone,
did you say that you turn the K? Okay, it
Okay.
seems like this is just a new extrapolation off of your argument that you never said to actually turn the K. It's only a no solvency argument. How is that a turn?
Okay, sure. The arguments from the case that I extended apply to the case. They say that status quo conceptions of gender are exclusionary. The app solves for that. Case was over. It's a net benefit, which means that
It's a net benefit to doing the app. How is that a turn?
what do you mean? No, the argument is that the status quo conception of gender is bad. That's the argument. That was
Sure,
extended
okay.
from the app pretty clearly.
That's fine. Return the NC.
Return the NC. Make process of NC.
Are those terms?
Like they would obviously answer the NC, right?
The order is going to be overview to the round, AC framework, NC KY. You can come in.
So overview, K, AC, NC.
Yes.
Cool.
Wait, that's not what I thought.
Oh, wait, sorry. Overview, AC framework,
Oh, okay.
NC K. Everyone ready?
Mhm.
The biggest problem with the previous teacher is that he conceded Wood 1. So Wood 1 is specifically phrased as a turn to the contention and also prevent a damning framework response. So go to Wood 1. Except philosophy is key to solving the question because you by believing a single ideology could be capable of solving all problems. I specifically say that your single ideology, which is just resisting oppression, is never enough to actually resist all oppression, and instead you only perpetuate the oppression. So the warden would says that here use uncritical doctrine of rejection of all view could never exist, and to think a certain philosophy would reject all moral error is extremely dangerous. That itself is responsible for that you people do because you ignore other instances of more immoral actions that are not necessarily oppression. That is a damning turn because you can see that that's a turn. Because you cause more oppression in other instances, or other harms that aren't even oppression, but they still link into AC because or otherwise you'd be ignoring intuitive problems of your moral theory. And Lisa when it controls the internal link to your oppression arguments because the only way it can deconstruct oppression is by challenging all prejudice, and philosophy is key. Also, go to the Russell card. Extend that philosophy is liberatory because the woman has no tincture of philosophy, goes to blind and present by our own prejudice, but free from tyranny and removes the arrogant dogmatism of those who travel with religion, liberating doubt by showing familiar things and unfamiliar aspects. So this what you say that you just say that all you don't say all philosophy is bad. However, it isn't a question of all philosophy is bad. We have to embrace different types of philosophy, not just your philosophy of resisting oppression is good, because we have to look at different ways of thinking things. Otherwise, we will never see the perspective of others, and we will continue to oppress them in those ways. So. You're not doing nearly enough responses, nearly enough work on your responses to your framework. You can see the turn from Wood that has 100% single blame. Don't let him respond to it in the next speech because he already had the opportunity to, and he even said that it wasn't even an important argument. So don't buy it. But on the line by line. His first intention is that it has to resist oppression. However, and he says that in response to Russell and Wood too. However, you limit philosophy too much because you say that you can only resist, you only can resist oppression, but you have to ignore all other NC frameworks. Also, you can send the no warrant file you can extend the fallacy origin argument on the epistemology arguments because it isn't a question because of epistemology. Just because we have epistemology doesn't mean that we have to respect epistemology. Also, he tried to go for the democracy argument. This argument isn't even relevant. I'm not talking about democracy. I'm talking about consistency with universalizability, and that universalizability is under the NC. It isn't a question of how society functions and how society functions currently, but it's a question of how we look to universalizability to come to the conclusion that we do. So we can come to the conclusion that oppression is bad, but it just doesn't matter as much under the NC. Also, because he's not talking about universalizability. Also, he never made that cross application directly to the NC. Don't give him that credence because he never made. Don't do the work for him. But on the argument of burden of proof, he says that historically liberalism has been used to marginalize people. However, you can extend the quality argument that I am not assuming that there is this was originally phrased in response to number 3, which that the NC assumed the starting point. However, I do not assume a starting point. I provide that starting point through practical reason because we are all able to come to the same conclusion. Therefore, we are all worth the same. So that responds to his extension of Silva because he says that it's used to marginalize. However, no philosophy is used in a way that we liberal that we are able to use. To expose them to the world. So, go to the NC. Extend Bellman that we look to universal reason because that's how we know 2 + 2 = 4. Also, you can extend Ripstein that the united will is the united will is based on universalizability because that's how we come to the same conclusion. That's why law stays consistent throughout the change of presidents. Also, extend Salamana, that we owe our respect to our parents because they are the ones who are the reasons why we are here today. Also, off of Ripstein too, you can say that children are subordinate to the guardians who are responsible for their upbringing because parents bring children to the world. Therefore, their parent has to have control over their children. I'll get to the cross applications later. But also, you can send the first argument that the last of the argument that there is a difference between a wrong and a harm. You can't hold against my head to generate a charity. So wrong means getting good, and they're still illegitimate. That's why he turns don't link. So all of the arguments that he has in his case are wrongs because they're not harm. They're not harm harm that people have directly done to their adolescents to prevent them from. It is not a harm for a parent to make a decision for their children. It is just a wrong because you think that they should get that autonomy. Even if they do get that autonomy, it doesn't link as hard under the NC framework because it is not a direct harm to them. So under the NC, we have to have that respect for law that he does not have, So all of this cross applications don't matter because of the wrong versus harm. But also, you can extend the first reason why you can't evaluate NC's impact as much under the NC because every impact is a new set of impacts onto a individual. We don't know when all the important effects happen, so we don't know what the bright line is to stop looking at those impacts. But so that's very sufficient to not vote off of any terms to the NC that you think he may have made. He made those cross applications very quickly, did not explain them whatsoever, therefore you should not buy them because he did not do nearly enough work on them. I am the one putting in the work, I am doing the strength of link weighing as to why his arguments are much less probable to be true just based on ink and based on what the arguments he has conceded. So here's how the round breaks down. You don't have to vote off the K because even if he wins a turn to the K, the K does not matter. You would just look to the NC framework. Also, he's conceded would 1. Would 1 is damning because it says that we cannot ignore questions, different moral theories, and just look to a moral theory such as existing oppression because that is too narrow-minded and you ignore other instances of oppression, and that is how we would excuse other instances of oppression in the future. Also, he's also conceded Russell, which says that you cannot be too narrow-minded and you have to look for different instances of philosophy, not again just looking at oppression. His extension of Silva is through ink. Don't buy it. So the K doesn't matter because he's conceded too many of the arguments. I've done weighing as why the would turn comes first because that is a framework-based reason. That is why his framework operating under his framework, he causes more oppression in the first place. Therefore, that comes for the K and his other arguments.
Okay. I had minute 12.
A minute, yeah.
Orders to be overview, then we go to the B, then the critique, then the F overview, F contention, critique, then aftermarket. Okay. Okay, everyone ready?
James said that I conceded a lot of arguments. The problem is that all my arguments have been vetted with his other arguments, which mean that they directly would respond to him, which means that he cannot weigh these dropped arguments on strength of weight because obviously I have answered them. I've answered them now. On the case debate, he has conceded that only the affirmative can solve for things like oppression and creates a sense of fluid identity and rejects the static construction of gender that is characterized by the status quo. He did not go for the critique in the last week and conceded affirmative modes, which means that he has no offense under the oppression framework. Only the F has a risk of offense here. If I win the framework, then I win the round. Now to the top of the affirmative. The would one argument is not relevant here because we don't exclude we don't exclude philosophy. The argument here is just that philosophy has to be able to recognize to be able to recognize things like oppression in the first place. We do not limit the type of philosophy that you would be talking about. Rather, it just has to be an active resistance towards things like oppression, which is exactly what the affirmative talks about. His arguments here are that philosophy is liberatory and that there are ways to recognize different types of philosophy. The problem is that nowhere does the framework say that we cannot engage in these types of discussions in the discussion in the first place. He makes these extrapolations, but this is literally not the affirmative framework. This means that we do not cause the oppression that you talk about. We also, it seems kind of contradictory because we are an active resistance of oppression. So it seems contradictory that we would we would make oppression happen more. Moreover, we start from the position of the marginalized, which means that we inherently solve better. That's a bonus in 6 The framing issue here is that none of his terms as to why I cause more oppression are relevant here because we don't limit the types of philosophy that he would be talking about. Rather, or not, we can say that our plans of action and our ways of addressing things like ethics have to directly address things like oppression. So if I win that his framework does not do so, then I win the round. Here is why I do this. The bonus sola 6 evidence directly talks about his framework. It says that ideas of liberalism and ideas of universalism and equal opportunity are flawed because in the past they've just read things like oppression. He says he doesn't defend this around, but using practical reason. No, this is exactly the argument. Abstract things like philosophy have been applied in this way, and would obviously justify these types of things to keep people in power. It's a passive method of resistance, which is exactly what we criticize. The argument here is that in order for us to actually have this sort of to resist this oppression, has to be active, not passive, which is only what the affirmative does. Even if you buy his argument that like the NC stuff, he has to see that there's no violation on both sides. The first argument that I cross-applied from Decay was that like there's no violation of the parents' rights. You can still like consult people, which means that like there's no violation. At best, you can see that the case outweighs on a risk of offense to only the affirmative stopping oppression. So here's the way that the round breaks down. Only the F is offense to the oppression framework, which means that if I win oppression framework, I win the round. The problem is that none of his philosophy arguments apply. We don't exclude philosophy. Rather, we just say what the purpose of philosophy should be. Practical reason doesn't solve for this. The bonus solo 6 evidence specifically says that it has to be an active resistance, not a passive resistance. It wasn't extended to rank.
On just the framework level, then how does the NC framework engage it or weigh against it? Does the NC framework operate on a lower level? Is it on the same level? And so it's hard to distinguish. And then if the case offense is this transgendered stuff, then is the negs off a K or is it actually a DA? There's nothing that says that it's critical in nature, even it's just that it operates on the mindset. So how these impacts function and where they weigh is totally unclear and totally just all over the place. It's literally all over the place. So I mean, here's how my decision making breaks down. It's very simple. Everyone is conceding that oppression is the worst thing in the round, and that we have to resist it in some way. The question is, how do we resist it? There's general resistance from the AF. The negs argument is, this is the problem with the neg. You don't link in the NR or the NC, and I don't see it there, the NC framework to